All right, go ahead and open up to page 2, and we are going to read this whole entire section called The Foundation of a Nation, Our Founding Fathers. So these are our founding fathers right here in the bottom. And those are the people who wrote the Constitution, the rules of the United States. So this is on page 2, but it also continues on to page 3. So I'm going to even read this section on page 3, and maybe some of your answers are going to be part of this section on page 3. So all of this on this top part all has to do with the same title called The Foundation of a Nation, Our Founding Fathers. So let's go ahead and get started. Building a new country is a lot of hard work. Thousands of citizens risked their lives fighting for American independence from England, and many more worked to support the soldiers in their fight. A small group of men, known as the Founding Fathers of the United States, because they actually wrote or signed the Declaration of Independence or worked with the representatives to write the Constitution. Later in their lives, they continued to make a difference. 4 of our Founding Fathers went to become presidents of the United States. Do the names George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison sound familiar? Benjamin Franklin was never president, but he was one of the most famous of their founding fathers because he made so many contributions to our daily lives. You can read more about him in the biography section of this magazine. Another founding father, Alexander Hamilton, was the first Secretary of the Treasury. He was an expert at managing money and helped our country grow. Can you find a picture of him on a piece of money? Hint, look at the $10 bill. So our founding father was Alexander Hamilton, which is him. And he's also on the $10 bill. John Jay was a founding father who also became our very first Chief Justice of the United States. He felt very strongly about equal rights for all men. He worked hard to make slavery illegal in his state of New York. These men did their very best to create the right kind of government, to make sure the citizens had rights they deserved, and to ensure the safety of all of us. Let's take a closer look at the government they built and helped grow. The United States had a system or structure of the government that is very special. There are 3 separate sections called the branches. These branches work together to make sure that everyone in the United States has an opportunity to be independent and free. Because the branches have to work together, no one person or group can ever have too much control or power. This is especially true because many of our leaders have to be elected. One branch is called the legislative branch. Legislative means law, and in our country, the laws are made by the Congress. Members of the Congress belong to 2 different groups. Representatives are elected by citizens, and every state and are members of the House of Representatives. Senators belong to a group called the Senate. Members of the Congress write, discuss, and vote on laws of the land. Another branch of the government is called executive branch. The leader in our country is the president, who works with the Congress who approves the laws to make sure that they are carried out for the citizens. The president is the head of our armed forces and is sometimes called the commander-in-chief. He also represents the United States and other parts of the world. The third branch is called the judicial branch and is in charge of the court system in our country. The judges and courts interpret the Constitution to make sure that the laws are constitutional, agreed with the Constitution. If they think that a law does not agree with the Constitution, they can send it back to the Congress for review. Checks and balance. We have 3 branches, so remember that, 3 branches. And each one is just as powerful as the other. That means no branch can have too much power. This is the balance of the power referred to in the article. Number 1, the first branch is the legislative branch, which makes our laws. 2 is the executive branch, which is the president. He enforces the law, makes sure everybody follows the law. 3, the judicial branch interprets the law and applies the law. So this is like the court system. The balance of power is also known as a check and balance. As shown below, each branch has checks or other two. The legislative checks on the executive. So the legislative checks on the president to make sure that he's doing his job. He can impeach or remove the president. He can override vetoes, control spending of money. The legislative checks on the judicial branch. Can impeach or remove federal judges. That means if a judge's not doing his job, they can tell him that he can no longer be a judge. Established lower federal courts can refuse to confirm judicial appointments. The judicial checks on the legislative. They can declare acts of Congress unconstitutional. The judicial checks on the executive can declare executive acts unconstitutional. Judges appointed for life are free from executive control. The executive checks on the judicial, which means appoints federal judges, can grant reprieves and pardon for federal crimes. And the executive checks on the legislative, can veto acts of Congress, can call spend sessions of Congress. So now go ahead and get your sheet out and answer the questions that are on the board.